Security! Escort this beggar out before she ruins my gala!
Please, my daughter. I only came to see Victor.
Titi Okafor Alo's voice sliced through the ballroom. Every guest turned. A frail old woman stood beneath the chandeliers in an indigo blouse, mustard wrapper, and dusty slippers. Her wooden stick shook. Her torn paper bag had spilled complaint letters across the marble floor. "Please, my daughter," she whispered. "I came to see Victor." Titi swept forward in her ruby-red gown. "Victor? You followed the smell of free food into a billionaire Alo's gala, and now you are calling my husband Alo's name? Poor people have lost their shame." A gold invitation card fell from the woman Alo's bag. "Thief!" Titi screamed. "Search her!" The guards grabbed her weak arm. Then a cold voice rose behind them. "Take your hands off her!" Victor Okafor stepped into the silence. Titi pointed. "Darling, this beggar stole from our guests." Victor stared at her. "Beggar?" He crossed the hall and held the trembling woman. "Titi, that is my mother. Do not leave now. Subscribe. Then tell us your city and local time in the comments." Those letters were about to expose a betrayal far bigger than this humiliation. 18 days before that night, at exactly 10:47 on a humid Tuesday morning, Titi Okafor stood in front of a repaired bungalow in a Manquo community, Enugu State, holding the hand of a 76-year-old widow, as though the two of them had known each other for years. 3 cameras faced her. A ring light softened her skin. Behind her, a white banner carried the silver logo of the Silver Haven Initiative and the slogan, "Every elder deserves dignity." Titi smiled. The smile was perfect. "Today," she said, looking straight into the main camera, "we are restoring more than a roof. We are restoring hope. Mama, how do you feel now that your home is safe again?" The old woman opened her mouth, but before she could answer, Titi squeezed her fingers. "Take your time, Mama," Titi said sweetly. Then, without moving her lips much, she whispered, "Say what we practiced." The widow looked at the cameras. She looked at the people standing behind them, then she swallowed. "I thank Silver Haven." "Ah," she said, "may God bless all of you." "Beautiful," the director called. Titi released the woman, Alo's hand, immediately. "Cut?" she asked. "Yes, Ma." Titi stepped away and stretched out her palm. Her assistant placed a sanitizing wipe into it before she even asked. Titi cleaned each finger carefully, then glanced at the front of the bungalow. A faded wrapper hung from a rope beside the doorway. "What is that?" she demanded. The assistant followed her eyes. "Her clothes, Ma. I can see that they are clothes. Why are they inside my frame?" The assistant rushed to remove them. Titi turned to the director. "And that blue plastic chair. Change it." "But Ma, it belongs to her. It looks poor." The director hesitated. They were filming a charity project for poor elderly people. Everybody there understood the madness of the sentence. Nobody said it. Titi pointed at a new cushioned chair, brought for the shoot. "Put that one near the door. We are not producing a documentary on suffering. We are selling dignity." A community volunteer, a lean man in his 50s, frowned. "Madam," he said carefully, "the rain still enters through the back room. The roof work is not complete." Titi Alo's face tightened. "Who are you?" "I helped to register the beneficiaries, then help to register them. Do not come and teach me construction." "The contractor left 2 weeks ago." Titi looked at her cousin, Ibrahim, who stood beside a black SUV in a dark green kaftan. Ibrahim raised one eyebrow. It was enough. "The contractor is returning," he said. "Materials are delayed." The volunteer lowered his voice. "Sir, the report says the house is completed." Ibrahim smiled without warmth. "Oga, are you the auditor?" "No, sir." "Then do not carry a file bigger than your head." The man fell silent. Titi adjusted the waist of her cream suit and faced the camera again. "Let us take the entrance shot one more time," she said. "This time, Mama should hug me before speaking. It will feel more natural." The widow stared at her. Natural. 2 streets away, in a smaller compound with cracked concrete and a guava tree growing beside the fence. Ruth Okafor pressed one hand against a newly installed railing and pushed. The metal bar shifted away from the wall. She pushed again. One screw rolled across the floor. Ruth watched it stop near her slipper. She was 70 years old. Her hair had turned almost completely white after the stroke, and the left side of her body still moved with stubborn delay. Her indigo blouse sat loosely on her shoulders. Her right hand gripped a polished wooden walking stick. The left hung close to her body, its fingers curling when she became tired. Her mind, however, missed nothing. "Who fixed this?" she asked. The woman standing beside her, a retired teacher of 68, shifted uneasily. "2 boys came with 1 van," she said. "They said Silver Haven sent them." "How long did they work?" "Maybe 3 hours. 3 hours?" "They drilled the wall. They took pictures. They gave me 1 walking frame to hold. After the pictures, they said the frame was for another person." Ruth Ello's eyes lifted. "They collected it?" "Yes, Ma. Did they ask you to sign anything?" The woman went inside and returned with a carbon copy form. Ruth read it slowly. Delivered. 1 adjustable walking frame. Installed. 1 reinforced bathroom rail. Completed. External access ramp. She looked toward the front step. There was no ramp. "What did they tell you this paper meant?" Ruth asked. "They said it was to show that they visited. Can you read small print without your glasses?" "No." "Did anybody explain it to you?" "No." Ruth folded the paper carefully. Outside, the sound of applause floated from the next street, where Titi Allow's cameras were recording Hope. Ruth turned toward it. Her mouth became a straight line. 14 months earlier, a blood vessel in Ruth Allow's brain had closed while she was preparing yam porridge in her kitchen. She had fallen beside the stove and remained on the floor for 17 minutes, before a neighbor heard the pot burning. Victor had flown from Lagos before dawn. He paid every bill. He moved her to a private rehabilitation center. He ordered imported equipment, hired a physiotherapist, and arranged a driver. He did everything money could do. Then he returned to Lagos. At first, he called twice a day. Later, work became busy. Calls became shorter. Visits moved from weekly to monthly, then to whenever a board meeting did not interfere. Ruth did not complain. That was partly love. It was also pride. She had spent 41 years as a community nurse. She had bathed women after surgery, carried babies during floods, dressed wounds under kerosene's lamps, and argued with grown men who believed high blood pressure was caused by witches. She did not know how to become the helpless person in the room. So when Victor asked, "Mama, are you all right?" she always answered, "I am managing." He heard strength. She meant loneliness. After leaving rehabilitation, Ruth refused to move into Victor Allow's Lekki mansion. "I have not died," she told him. "Do not pack me like luggage." Victor laughed then, relieved that her old fire had returned. He arranged a renovated bungalow for her in Enugu and hired support workers. Ruth dismissed 2 of them for speaking about her, as though she were absent. The third lasted longer because she asked before touching Ruth Allow's arm. It was Ruth who first suggested that Victor use some of his company, Allow's social investment funds, to improve access for elderly people recovering from illness. She gave him notes from her years as a nurse: safe rails, proper ramps, simple medicine storage, regular home checks. Nothing glamorous. Victor loved the idea. Titi loved the camera possibilities. Silver Haven Initiative was registered 7 months later. Without asking Ruth, Titi named the first campaign the Mama Ruth Dignity Project. The launch brochure carried an old photograph of Ruth from 1996. In it, she was 42, full-faced and strong, wearing a white nurse aloes uniform and standing beside a rural clinic. Most donors had never seen her current face. Titi had never seen it in person. 5 days before Victor Alo's family introduction ceremony, Ruth suffered the stroke. During the first months of recovery, she refused video calls. Her speech was slow then, and one side of her mouth drooped. "I do not want anybody squeezing face at me with pity," she said. Titi spoke to her 3 times on the telephone. Each call lasted less than 4 minutes. Victor invited his wife to Enugu more than once. There was always a reason she could not go. A donor dinner, a television appearance, a strategy retreat, a headache. But Titi had no problem placing Ruth Alo's younger face on banners across Lagos. By 1:16 that afternoon, Ruth had visited 8 houses listed as completed under the Silver Haven project. Only 2 had work that could be called safe. One ramp was so steep that a wheelchair would roll backwards unless 2 strong people pushed it. Another ended directly in an open gutter. At a 3rd house, a widow showed Ruth a bag of cement that had hardened under rain after workers abandoned the site. At the 9th house, they met a man lying on a thin mattress with his leg wrapped in cloth. He had fallen in a bathroom where the promised support rail had never been installed. Ruth sat beside him. "Did the project people visit?" she asked. "They came," he said. "They took my picture outside." "Did they give you anything?" "1 food parcel. Rice, beans, oil, and the bathroom work?" "They said they would return." "When?" "April." It was September. Ruth took out a ruled notebook. Her handwriting was slower than before the stroke, but every letter was clear. "Tell me your full name," she said. By sunset, she had 11 written complaints. By the end of the week, she had 37. Some people signed. Some pressed inked thumbs onto the paper because they could not write. Ruth attached photographs, copies of forms and short notes, explaining what each person had actually received. She did not begin with anger. She began with facts. In Lagos, Simi Johnson was also following facts. At 29, Simi had the quiet face of somebody people often underestimated. She wore pale turquoise blouses, kept her hair in neat twists, and spoke softly until numbers were involved. Then her voice became firm. She worked in compliance at Crestline Holdings. 6 weeks earlier, Victor had asked her to review the charity ALO's internal controls before the gala. "Routine check," he had said. It did not remain routine for long. Simi sat alone in a glass meeting room on the 13th floor of the Crestline building and compared 11 invoices from 3 construction companies. The company names were different. The bank accounts were different. The errors were the same. Each invoice described reinforced bathroom rail instead of rail. Each placed a comma after the same wrong word. Each carried a contact telephone number that had been changed by only 1 digit. Simi checked the metadata. All 11 files had been created from the same laptop. She leaned back. "Hope no problem," she murmured. There was problem. The payments had been divided into smaller amounts, each just below the level, requiring additional board approval. 6 transfers went out between 6:11 and 6:47 on the same Friday evening. 3 landed in accounts linked to businesses less than 4 months old. One company had received 86,430,000 naira. Its registered office was a 1-bedroom flat above a tire shop in Surulere. Simi printed the documents. Then she looked at them again and decided not to leave the only copies in her office. At 4:32, she requested a meeting with Titi. Titi kept her waiting for 53 minutes. When Simi entered, Titi was reviewing photographs from the Enugu shoot. In one image, Titi bent beside the widow and smiled into the distance. In another, she held an empty paintbrush near a wall she had not painted. "Madam," Simi began, "I found irregularities in the procurement records." Titi did not look up. "What kind?" "Possible related vendors. Duplicate documentation. Payments split below approval thresholds." Now Titi raised her eyes. "How many people know?" The question came too quickly. Simi noticed. "I have not completed the review." "That is not what I asked. Only me for now." Titi smiled. It was the same smile she had used for the cameras. "Good. Then there is no need to alarm anybody over clerical mistakes. These are not ordinary mistakes, Ma. You are very young to be so certain. The dates, company records, and file metadata point to coordination." Titi placed the photographs down. "Simi, do you know how charities work?" "I know how controls should work." "That was not my question." Simi waited. Titi stood and walked around the desk. "People like you read policies and think the world moves in straight lines. It does not. Contractors delay. Community leaders change figures. Banks make errors. If we stop every project because one compliance officer is squeezing her face, old people will suffer. Old people may already be suffering." The room became still. Titi stepped closer. "What did you say?" "I said the completion reports need physical verification." Titi Arlo's smile disappeared. "You were sent to check documents. Do not carry yourself like EFCC inside my office." "With respect, Ma, the project received 243.7 million naira. We cannot certify work we have not verified." Titi looked toward the glass wall. Outside employees moved between desks without knowing what was happening in the room. "Where are the copies?" Titi asked. "In the review folder." "Only there?" Simi paused. "Yes, Ma." It was her first lie of the day. Titi returned to her chair. "Leave it with me. And do not discuss it with Victor yet. He is preparing for an investor meeting. I will not allow small administrative confusion to distract my husband." Simi did not move. "Is that an instruction?" Titi Arlo's eyes hardened. "It is wisdom. Learn it." When Simi returned to her desk, her system password no longer worked. She called technology support. The technician sounded embarrassed. "Madam, your access was suspended for security maintenance." "Whose instruction?" "I do not know." Simi looked through the glass at Titi Arlo's office. Titi was already speaking on the phone. "Ibrahim," she said, "we have a rat in the records. In Enugu, Ruth sealed 12 complaints inside a brown envelope and addressed it to Victor Okafor personally. She attached a note. My son, do not be angry before you check. Do not defend anybody before you listen. These people trusted your name. Please come and see what your name has been used to cover. Your mother. She sent the envelope by express courier. It reached Crestline Aloe's Lagos office 2 days later at 9:08 in the morning. Victor was in Abuja for a 3-day infrastructure summit. The receptionist saw the Silver Haven logo on one attached document and sent the envelope to Titi Aloe's office. Titi opened it. She read the first complaint, then the second. By the fourth, her hands had begun to shake. Ibrahim sat across from her, chewing gum. "How many?" he asked. 12 in this envelope." "Only 12? She says there are more." Ibrahim reached for one photograph. It showed an unfinished ramp ending beside a gutter. "These village people like to complain," he said. "Give them small money." T slapped his hand away from the documents. "This is not about village people. Look at the note." He read it. His chewing slowed. "Victor Aloe's mother?" "Yes. I thought she was sick." "She had a stroke. She did not lose her brain." "Does she know about us?" "She knows enough to make him ask questions." Ibrahim leaned back. "What do you want to do?" Titi walked to the window. Lagos spread below her in glass, traffic, and heat. From the 13th floor, people looked small. Problems also looked small. Until they entered the lift. The gala is in 18 days, she said. We need the second donor release before then. And the old woman? She will be invited. Ibrahim stared at her. You want her here? I want to know what she knows. I want her where I can control the room. And if she speaks to Victor? Titi turned. She will not reach him alone. That evening, Victor called his mother from Abuja. Mama, I saw the gala program, he said. Titi named the whole project after you. Ruth sat beside her window, watching a lizard move along the fence. She did not ask me. Victor laughed softly. You would have refused. Yes, that is why she did not ask. Ruth did not laugh. My son, when somebody uses your name, you must know what they are carrying with it. Victor was quiet for a moment. Are you angry? I am concerned. About the name? About the work. Before Ruth could continue, Titi Alo's voice entered the call. Victor had placed her on speaker from another line. Mama, Titi said brightly. I was just telling Victor we must bring you to Lagos. The whole evening is to honor you. Ruth looked down at her weak left hand. Titi had never called her mama before. I do not need honor, Ruth said. I need answers. There was a brief silence. Then Titi laughed. Ah, Mama, you and your nurse seriousness. You will see everything when you come. The houses, the reports, the impact film. You will be proud. Will I meet the people? Which people? The people whose houses you repaired. Of course, some beneficiaries will attend. Good. Victor sounded pleased. So you will come? Ruth looked at the thick folder beside her chair. Yes, she said. I will come. After the call ended, Titi remained still in her office. Victor had not heard the warning inside Ruth Alo's voice. She had. At 8:41 that night, she called the logistics company responsible for collecting Ruth from the airport.
Cancel.
The booking, she said. The coordinator checked the reference number. Madam, should we inform Mrs. Okafor? No, I will make private arrangements. There were no private arrangements. Titi believed a 70-year-old woman with one weak arm would land in Lagos, find nobody waiting, and return home in confusion. She believed frailty meant surrender. That was her second mistake. On the morning of the gala, Ruth changed her flight. Her original booking was for 11:20. She moved it to the first flight leaving Enugu at 7:05. The airline charged her an additional 38,600 naira. Ruth paid without arguing. She wanted to reach Victor before the music, the cameras, and the speeches began. She wanted to sit with her son privately and place the evidence before him. Family deserved one chance to tell the truth before strangers entered the matter. That was what she believed. At 5:30 in the morning, Ruth packed one change of clothes, her medication, the original 37 complaints, and the notebook containing her field observations. She placed everything inside a brown paper document bag because the zip on her old leather folder had broken. Her neighbor offered to come with her. Ruth refused. I am not traveling to war, she said. The neighbor looked at the documents. Ruth, sometimes truth is war. Ruth smiled. Then I will carry only what I can defend. The flight did not leave at 7:05. A mechanical inspection delayed boarding. Then rain held the aircraft on the ground. By the time they landed in Lagos, it was 12:43 in the afternoon. Ruth switched on her phone. 3% battery. No missed call from the driver. She called the number Titi Alo's office had sent. It rang once and cut. She tried Victor. His assistant answered. Mrs. Okafor. Good afternoon, Ma. Sir is inside the final donor briefing. Tell him his mother has landed. I will tell him immediately. Do not put it in a message and forget. No, Ma, the battery dropped to 2%. Ruth found a charging point near baggage claim, but both sockets were occupied. One traveler had connected a phone and a power bank. Another had placed a bag across the seat. Ruth waited for 12 minutes. Nobody moved. Finally, she approached the traveler with the power bank. "My son, please, may I charge for 5 minutes? My battery is almost gone." The young man looked at her walking stick, then at the phone in her hand. "Mama, I still need my own. Only 5 minutes." He turned his face away. Ruth did not beg again. Outside the terminal, heat rose from the pavement. Drivers lifted signs. Men shouted destinations. A woman selling bottled water balanced a tray on her head. Ruth searched for her name. Nothing. She stood for 27 minutes before accepting that no car was coming. Then her phone died. A taxi driver approached. "Where are you going, Mama?" "Atlantic Crest Hotel, Victoria Island." He looked at her clothes. "For work? For a meeting?" He named a fare so high that Ruth laughed. "My son, I may be old, but I have not lost arithmetic." He grinned and reduced it. The journey took almost 2 hours because of traffic around Marina and a broken-down truck near Bonnie Camp. Ruth sat in the back, holding the paper bag against her chest each time the vehicle jerked. At 3:19, Victor Allo's assistant finally entered the donor briefing room and handed him a note. "Your mother landed. She asked that you call." Victor read it and reached for his phone. Titi touched his wrist under the table. "The state commissioner is presenting," she whispered. "Call her after. It may be urgent." "She is coming for the gala, not surgery. 5 minutes." Victor placed the phone down. The presentation lasted 41 minutes. By the time he called, Ruth Allo's phone was off. He assumed she was with the driver. The driver did not exist. The taxi reached the hotel at 4:06. Security barriers had already blocked the main entrance for red carpet preparation. Black SUVs lined the driveway. Workers carried flower arrangements through the lobby. The driver stopped near the service road. "Mama, they will not allow me further." "How far is the entrance?" "Maybe 400 meters. Ruth looked at the distance. Her left leg had begun to stiffen. "Can you help me find another gate?" The driver glanced at traffic behind him. Horns sounded. "Mama, I cannot wait. They will tow me." Ruth paid him. He removed her small bag from the boot, placed it beside the road, and drove away. For 1 minute, Ruth stood alone. Then she lifted the strap over her right shoulder, tucked the document bag beneath her arm, and began to walk. Step, stick, pause. Step, stick, pause. The distance was not long for a healthy body. For Ruth, it became a negotiation with every muscle that no longer obeyed quickly. Dust collected on her slippers. Sweat gathered beneath her headscarf. Twice, cars passed too close and forced her toward the edge of the road. A valet saw her and looked away. A decorator carrying flowers slowed down. "Are you all right, Ma? I am going to the hotel. The main entrance is there. I know." He shifted the flowers in his arms, almost offering help. Someone shouted his name from the loading bay. He hurried away. Ruth continued. At the service gate, a security man blocked her. "Where are you going?" "Inside." "For what?" "To see Victor Okafor." The man looked at her from head to toe. "Do you have appointment?" "I am expected. Invitation?" Ruth searched the outer pocket of her small bag. The printed invitation was not there. She had placed it between the documents to keep it flat. "Wait," she said. People moved behind her. A delivery van sounded its horn. The guard became impatient. "Mama, shift from the gate." I said, "Wait." Before she found the invitation, a woman in a turquoise blouse stepped out of a staff entrance carrying a laptop bag. It was Simi. She had been summoned to the hotel, despite her suspended system access, because Titi wanted her physically present for the donor compliance desk. Publicly, it looked normal. Privately, Simi had been instructed not to speak to Victor. Simi saw Ruth Allo's left leg tremble. "Sir, let her sit first," she told the guard. This entrance is restricted. Restricted does not mean she should fall. Simi placed her laptop bag down and brought a plastic chair from the security desk. Ruth lowered herself carefully. "Thank you, my daughter. Can I get you water?" "Yes, please." The guard looked embarrassed now that someone with a staff badge had taken responsibility. He stepped aside. Simi returned with a sealed bottle and opened it before handing it over. Ruth drank slowly. "Your name?" she asked. "Simi Johnson." Ruth Allow's fingers tightened around the bottle. She knew the name. It appeared in the internal emails attached to one of the printed reports. Compliance review assigned. S. Johnson. Ruth did not reveal herself. "Do you work with Silverhaven?" Simi glanced toward the guard. "I support some of their controls. Support or investigate." Simi looked at her properly for the first time. "Who are you, Ma?" "A woman looking for Victor Okafor." "That does not answer the question." Ruth smiled faintly. "Good. You do not give information because an old woman asks nicely." Simi Allow's expression softened, but only slightly. "Do you have a way to contact Mr. Okafor?" "My phone died. You can use mine." Ruth knew Victor O's number by heart. She called. The line rang. Inside the hotel, Victor Allow's phone lay on a table while he stood in another room rehearsing his speech. No answer. Simi tried the executive assistant. The call went to voicemail. "Let me take you to the reception area," Shah said. "We will find somebody." The guard shook his head. "She cannot pass without clearance." Simi lifted her staff badge. "I am clearing her to sit in the staff lobby while we verify." "You do not have that authority, and you do not have authority to leave an elderly woman under the sun." The guard opened his mouth, then closed it. Simi carried Ruth Allow's small bag. Ruth held the documents herself. They entered through the service corridor. Atlantic Crest had prepared the ballroom for 214 guests. Chandeliers cast warm light over silver table settings. A raised stage stood beneath a large portrait of Ruth as a younger nurse. Above it, the words "Every elder deserves dignity" shone in white letters. Ruth stopped when she saw her face. The photograph had been enlarged to nearly 3 meters. Her younger self looked down at the room with strong shoulders and a serious mouth. "That is me," Ruth said. Simi turned. "What?" Ruth pointed. On the banner, Simi looked from the photograph to the woman beside her. The years between the two faces were heavy. The old photograph showed dark hair, full cheeks, and a straight posture. Ruth now stood thin, silver-haired, and supported by a stick. But the eyes were the same. Simi Allow's breath caught. "You are Mrs. Ruth Okafor?" "Yes." "Mr. Okafor-O's mother?" "Yes." Simi stared at the document bag. Ruth watched understanding move across her face. "You found something," Ruth said. Simi Allow's eyes shifted toward the ballroom doors. "I am not sure this is the right place. Truth does not wait for a comfortable chair." "Ma, there are cameras everywhere. Let us reach Mr. Okafor privately. That is what I came to do." Simi lowered her voice. "I reviewed the vendor payments. The records do not match." Ruth opened the bag enough to show the first stack of complaints. The houses do not match either. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Numbers and broken walls had finally entered the same room. At 5:02, Titi came through the ballroom in a robe, followed by 2 stylists and Ibrahim. Her ruby gown had not yet been fully fastened. She was giving instructions about table placement when she noticed Simi beside an elderly woman. Her steps slowed. She did not recognize Ruth Allow's face. She recognized the brown envelope. "What is she doing here?" Titi asked. Simi turned. "Madam, this is—" Titi lifted one finger. "I did not ask who she is. I asked what she is doing here." Ruth studied her daughter-in-law. Titi was beautiful, not soft beautiful, sharp beautiful. Every detail looked controlled, from the smooth line of her wig to the red polish on her toes. "You must be Titi," Ruth said. Titi Alla's eyes narrowed. "And who gave you permission to call my name like we are age mates?" Simi stepped forward. "Madam, please keep quiet. Since when did compliance become social welfare?" Ruth rested both hands on her stick. "My daughter, I came to see Victor." Titi looked toward the stylists. One of them lowered her eyes to hide a reaction. "Victor?" Titi repeated. "Which Victor?" "Victor Okafor." A short laugh escaped Titi. "Everybody in Lagos is looking for Victor Okafor. Some want contracts, some want school fees, some want to carry sickness into our house. What do you want?" "A conversation. Do you have an appointment?" "I have more than that." Ruth held Titi Allo's gaze. Titi saw no fear there. That irritated her. She moved closer and glanced at the dusty slippers, the faded wrapper, and the walking stick. "This hall is for donors," she said. "Not people who followed the smell of free food from the roadside." Simi inhaled sharply. Ruth Allo's face did not change. "Poverty is not dirt," she said. "Old age is not a crime." Titi Allo's jaw tightened. "Do not preach to me inside my own event. Then do not insult me inside an event carrying my face." The stylists looked at the banner. Titi also looked. For 1 second, confusion touched her face. Then suspicion replaced it. "What nonsense are you saying?" Ruth reached into the paper bag. Simi saw Titi Allo's eyes follow the movement. Simi said quickly, "Let us go to the private lounge." Titi blocked them. "Nobody is going anywhere." She turned to Ibrahim. "Call security." Ruth drew out the printed invitation. "I was invited." Titi snatched it before Ruth could unfold it. The card bore Ruth Okafor Allo's name. Titi stared at it. Ibrahim stepped closer. His face changed first. He understood. Titi did not. How did you get this?" she demanded. "It was sent to me. This is a VIP invitation. I can read." "Did you pick it from somebody Allo's rubbish?" Ruth looked at her for a long moment. "Is this how you speak to the old people whose pictures you use?" Titi Allo's face hardened. "Security." 2 guards entered. Simi moved between them and Ruth. "Madam, there is no need for this. I can confirm her identity." Titi turned slowly. "You can confirm what?" Simi realized Ruth had not chosen to announce herself. She stopped. Titi smiled. "So, now you are bringing strangers into a restricted venue and inventing identities for them." "No, Ma. Your access was suspended this morning. Do you want your employment to join it?" Simi Allo's hands curled at her sides. Ruth saw it. "Do not threaten her because she gave me water," Ruth said. Titi looked disgusted. "Water? This is how it starts. You give them 1 bottle, and next they are calling you daughter and asking for your salary." Ruth Allo's voice became quieter. "Kindness is not a contract. You do not lose anything because you allowed a tired person to sit." Titi stepped so close that the perfume around her became heavy. "You old street people are becoming too bold. Look at your wrapper. Look at your bag. Do you think because charity is written on the wall, you can enter anywhere?" Ruth looked at the slogan above the stage. "Every elder deserves dignity." Then she looked back at Titi. "Does every elder deserve it?" she asked. "Or only the ones who look good beside your gown?" The question landed. One of the guards lowered his eyes. Titi Allo's cheeks burned. "Remove her." Simi did not move. "Madam, please let me call Mr. Okafor." "You will do no such thing." "Why?" "Because I said so." "That is not a reason." The ballroom became still. Titi turned to Simi with a slow, dangerous calm. "You are a junior compliance officer wearing a borrowed staff badge. Do not mistake air conditioning for equality. I can send you back to counting receipts in a roadside shop before this event begins." Simi Allo's face went pale. Ruth placed her right hand on Simi Allo's wrist. "Do not answer anger with anger," she said. Titi laughed. "See this one? She has already adopted you." Ibrahim moved behind Ruth. His hand slipped into the pocket of his kaftan. Inside it was a gold access card taken from the registration table. "Madam," he said loudly, "let us check her bag. These people do not enter places like this without a plan." Ruth turned slightly. "You will not touch my documents." Ibrahim raised both palms. "Why are you afraid?" "I am not afraid. I am refusing." Titi pointed at the paper bag. "Search it." One guard hesitated. "Ma, should we call police?" "First, know what she has carried." Simi stood firm. "You cannot search her without consent or proper cause." Titi Allah's voice rose. "Proper cause?" "A dirty stranger is standing inside a closed Billionaire gala with a VIP card. Is that not cause?" Guests had begun arriving early for photographs. A few stopped near the doors. Phones came out. Ruth noticed them. She also noticed how quickly human beings turned another person, Alo's humiliation, into entertainment. "Ibrahim," Titi said, "check that bag." He reached for it. Ruth pulled back. The movement threw her balance. Simi caught her shoulder. In that brief confusion, Ibrahim slipped the gold access card beneath the top stack of papers. Then he seized the side of the bag and shook it. The bottom tore, papers scattered across the marble. The gold card fell among them. Ibrahim stepped back as though shocked. "Ah!" he cried. "What is this?" Titi bent and picked it up. Her eyes widened with performance. "You stole a donor access card?" Ruth looked at the card. "I have never seen it, liar." "I said I have never seen it." Titi raised the card for the gathering guests. "See, this woman entered through the staff area and stole from my registration desk." "That is false," Simi said. Titi rounded on her. "You were with her?" "Yes. Then perhaps both of you planned it. God forbid. I found her at the gate. Found her? Or brought her? I gave her a chair. And now she has stolen." Ruth looked at Simi. "My daughter, stand back. Do not lose your work because of me." Simi shook her head. "Ma, right is right." The first camera flash went off, then another. A woman in a silver dress stepped away from Ruth, pulling her train aside as though dust could jump. A man whispered, "How did security allow this?" Somebody laughed. Titi heard it and grew bolder. "The security! Throw this beggar out before she stains my carpet!" Her voice sliced through the ballroom. Every guest turned. Ruth stood beneath the chandeliers in her indigo blouse, mustard wrapper, and dusty slippers. Her wooden stick shook. Her torn paper bag had spilled complaint letters across the marble floor. "Please, my daughter," she said, her voice low but steady. "I came to see Victor." Titi swept forward in her ruby-red gown. "Victor? You followed the smell of free food into a billionaire Alo's gala, and now you are calling my husband Alo's name. Poor people have lost their shame." She held up the gold card. "Na thief!" she screamed. "Search her!" The guards moved. One took Ruth Alo's right arm. The other caught the left. Pain shot from her weak shoulder to her fingers. Ruth gasped. "Leave that arm." The guard tightened his grip, afraid she would fall. It hurt more. "Leave her!" Simi shouted. The room blurred around Ruth. The lights became too bright. Her left knee bent. Then a cold voice rose behind them. "Take your hands off her!" The guards froze. Victor Okafor stood at the entrance, in a cobalt blue suit, his speech papers still in one hand. He had entered through the private corridor after an assistant told him there was trouble near the ballroom. At first, he saw only the crowd. Then he saw the wooden bracelet around the old woman Alo's wrist. He had made that bracelet many years earlier, from beads bought outside a church in Enugu. His mother had worn it for 29 years. Victor Alo's face emptied of color. He crossed the floor. "Release her." The guards obeyed. Ruth swayed. Victor caught her. "Mama." The word moved through the ballroom like wind through dry grass. Titi stood with the gold card in her hand. "Darling," she said quickly. "This beggar entered the VIP area. She stole from our guests. I was only protecting I. Victor looked at her. Beggar? His voice was quiet. That quiet frightened everybody who knew him. Titi swallowed. She said she wanted to see you. How was I supposed to know? Victor turned Ruth gently toward him. Her breathing was shallow. Her left arm hung stiffly. Dust marked the front of her wrapper. He looked back at his wife. Titi, he said, that is my mother. A champagne glass slipped from somebody Aloe's hand. It struck the marble and shattered. Nobody moved. Titi stared at Ruth as though the old woman Aloe's face might rearrange itself into the photograph above the stage. Her eyes jumped from Ruth to the giant image of the younger nurse. No, she whispered. Ruth looked at her, not with triumph, with sorrow. Yes, she said. Victor bent to gather the papers. He picked up the first complaint. A thumbprint sat beneath a statement about a missing wheelchair. He picked up another, unsafe rail. No ramp. Funds marked completed. Then another. Equipment removed after photographs. Victor looked at the 37 pages spread around his shoes. What are these? He asked. Ruth Ello's voice trembled, but not from fear. My son, the way your wife treated me is painful. She looked around the ballroom at the staring guests, the phones and the slogan shining over them. But what she has done to 57 old people is worse. Victor did not shout. That made the room more afraid. He placed one arm around Ruth and looked at the guards. Call the hotel doctor, now. One guard ran. Victor turned to the guests. Put your phones down. A few obeyed at once. Others lowered them slowly, pretending they had not been recording. He saw a man still filming from behind a flower arrangement. I said, put it down. The phone disappeared. Titi stepped toward him. Victor, please listen to me. She came through the staff gate. She had a stolen card. Simi was helping her. I did not know who she was. Victor looked at the card in Titi Aloe's hand. Where did it come from? Her bag. Who searched her? Ibrahim found it. Victor Aloe's eyes moved to Ibrahim. Ibrahim raised his palms. Sir, I only followed security procedure. Which procedure allows you to search a guest? Sir, she resisted. We thought. You thought what? Ibrahim said nothing. Victor looked down at the papers again. You thought she was poor enough to have no witness. Titi touched his sleeve. Darling, this is not the place. Ruth gave a tired laugh. Now it is not the place? She asked. When you were calling me thief, the place was good. Titi withdrew her hand. The hotel doctor arrived with a wheelchair and a medical bag. Ruth frowned when she saw the chair. I can walk. Mama, Victor said. Please, do not carry me on your head because you are guilty. He flinched. Ruth saw it and softened a little. My leg is tired. That is all. The doctor checked her blood pressure. It was dangerously high. He asked whether she had chest pain, blurred vision, or numbness beyond her usual weakness. Ruth answered every question herself. When Victor tried to explain her stroke history, she lifted one finger. He asked me. Victor closed his mouth. The doctor recommended immediate rest and observation in the hotel clinic. Ruth agreed, only after Simi gathered every fallen paper and counted them. 37, Simi said. Ruth nodded. Keep them with you. Titi reacted quickly. No, those documents concern the foundation. They should be handed to me. Ruth looked at her. You have handled enough. Victor Aloe's head turned toward Titi. Do not touch any record. She stared at him. What? From this moment, you have no access to foundation accounts, files, or staff instructions until an independent review is complete. Victor, you cannot suspend me in front of everybody. I have not suspended you from your title. I have restricted access to preserve evidence. You are humiliating me because of one misunderstanding. Ruth Aloe's eyes moved to the torn bag at their feet. One misunderstanding does not produce 37 complaints. Titi Aloe's face twisted. She is confused. She had a stroke. She may not understand what these people told her. The silence that followed was different from the first, colder. Ruth straightened. My speech became slow, she said. My memory did not become yours to dismiss. Simi looked at Titi with open disgust now. Victor Allow's voice remained controlled. Do not use my mother Allah's illness as a shield. I am trying to protect you. From what? From scandal. Victor looked around the ballroom. The scandal is already standing here in a red dress. A few guests looked down to hide their reaction. Titi Allow's face went rigid. She had never been spoken to like that by her husband. Not privately, never publicly. Victor signaled to the head of hotel security. Preserve every camera recording from 3:30 this afternoon. Registration desk, service corridor, ballroom entrance and staff lobby. Nobody edits, copies or deletes anything without written authorization from independent counsel. Titi Allow's eyes flickered toward Ibrahim. Victor saw it. He added, and remove all portable drives from the foundation office tonight. Seal them. 2 witnesses must sign. Ibrahim Allow's mouth became dry. Victor continued, the gala is cancelled. A donor stepped forward. Mr. Okafor, perhaps we can postpone the program, and no speeches, no fundraising. No photographs beside elderly people, while questions remain about whether their homes were repaired. He looked at the banner carrying Ruth Allow's younger face. Take that down, Titi gasped. That banner cost 4 million naira. Victor turned to her. That is what concerns you. She realized too late what she had said. Ruth was taken to the clinic. Simi followed with the documents. Victor walked beside his mother, adjusting his pace to hers. Behind them, the ballroom remained full of people who had dressed for celebration and found themselves standing inside evidence. Titi did not follow at once. She stood beneath the words, every elder deserves dignity, while workers began unplugging the stage lights. Ibrahim came close. We need to talk, he whispered. Titi did not look at him. You planted the card badly. You told me to stop her. I did not tell you to do it in front of cameras. You were the one shouting. She turned so sharply that the ruby stones at her ears shook. Do not speak to me like we are equal in this matter. Ibrahim stared at her. We collected that money together. Titi Allow's voice dropped. And I can still make it look as though you collected it alone. For the first time that evening, Ibrahim understood that his cousin was already planning to survive him. Inside the clinic, Ruth lay on a narrow bed while the doctor monitored her pressure. Victor sat beside her. He had removed his suit jacket. His phone rang every few minutes, but he switched it off. Ruth watched him. You should answer your calls. No, you have investors. I have a mother. You had one yesterday too. The words were not loud. They entered him like a blade. Victor looked down. Hamama, I am sorry. For what part? He had no answer ready. Ruth turned her face toward the ceiling. When I fell sick, you paid for machines I could not pronounce. You paid nurses, drivers, therapy. You repaired my house. I wanted you safe. Yes. Was that wrong? No. But you treated money like a person who could sit beside me. Victor rubbed his palms together. I called. You called between meetings. I came when I could. You came when nothing more important entered your diary. He looked at her. Ruth Allow's eyes shone, but she did not cry. I did not complain because I trained you to work hard. I was proud. Then one day I realized my son could build hospitals and still not notice that his mother had become afraid of bathing alone. Victor Allow's mouth opened. She continued. I did not tell you. That is my own fault. Pride can also be a kind of silence. He reached for her hand. This time he asked first, May I? Ruth placed her right hand in his. They sat like that until Simi entered with the documents arranged in order. Ma, all 37 are here. Victor stood. Simi, tell me what you know. Titi appeared at the doorway before Simi could speak. I should be present. Victor Allow's face hardened. No, this is my foundation. It is not your foundation. It is a registered organization holding money on behalf of donors and communities. I built it. My company funded the first phase. My face raised the rest. Ruth sat up slowly. And whose suffering raised your face? Titi looked at her. For 1 second, shame appeared, then it disappeared beneath anger. I came to apologize. Ruth waited. Titi glanced at Simi and the doctor, privately. Ruth shook her head. You insulted me before people, but you want to apologize where nobody can hear. This is a family matter. The theft is not. Titi Allow's nostrils flared. You have already decided I am guilty. No, Ruth said. I have decided the houses are unfinished, the rest must be checked. Victor moved toward the door. She stared at him. You are choosing her over me. She is unwell. She is controlling you. Ruth Allow's eyebrows lifted. By lying on a clinic bed, Titi ignored her. Victor, I made one mistake because security failed. I did not recognize her. You kept her away from me for years. I invited you to Enugu 7 times. I was working. For a foundation named after her. Titi Allow's lips parted. Victor held the door open. Leave. She walked out, but before she passed Simi, she leaned close. This will finish you, she whispered. Simi heard. So did Ruth. At 8:15 that evening, while the cancelled gala food was being packed for redistribution, Victor called an emergency meeting of Crestline Allow's Legal and Audit Committee. He refused to appoint anybody who had reported to Titi or Ibrahim. An independent forensic firm was engaged before midnight. The instructions were precise. Freeze further disbursements. Preserve source data. Verify every beneficiary physically. Trace vendors and beneficial owners. Review image consent forms. Examine the use of Ruth Allow's name and signature. Victor also instructed the hotel to preserve the original security footage. He did not ask the police to arrest Titi, not yet. Power could make accusation look like proof. Ruth had warned him against that. Evidence must speak before power speaks, she said. Victor repeated the sentence to every advisor who asked what outcome he wanted. I do not want an outcome, he said. I want facts. At 11:36, Ruth finally slept in a private suite. Simi remained in the adjoining room, scanning the 37 complaints onto an encrypted drive provided by the auditors. Victor sat alone by the window. Below, Lagos moved as if nothing had happened. His wife had called his mother a beggar. That sentence was painful. The papers were worse. At 12:07, T stood inside the bedroom of their Lekki house and removed her ruby earrings one at a time. Ibrahim waited near the door. You need to leave, she said. Leave where? Lagos. For some days. That will look guilty. You are guilty. So are you. Titi faced the mirror. The woman looking back at her still appeared composed. That was useful. Appearance had saved her before. When auditors ask, she said, you approved vendors. You handled procurement. You sent payment schedules. You signed them. As chairperson relying on your professional advice. Ibrahim laughed once. You want to put everything on my head? I want you to remember who brought you into this foundation after your transport business collapsed. I remember. I also remember the apartment in Dubai. Titi turned. Be careful. And the jewelry invoices. Be careful, Ibrahim. And the money transferred to your private image company. Titi walked toward him. Do you think Victor will believe a man who created fake vendors? Do you think he will believe a woman who called his mother a thief? The room went silent. They stared at each other. There was no loyalty left. Only shared danger. The following morning, Simi arrived at Crestline at 7:20 to meet the independent auditors. Her access card flashed red. A security officer approached. "Madam, I was instructed to collect your laptop and phone." "By whom?" "Human Resources." Victor had not given that instruction. Titi had sent it at 6:14 through an administrator who did not yet know her authority had been restricted. Simi called Victor from the lobby. He answered on the first ring. "Do not surrender anything," he said. "Wait there." 9 minutes later, the head of legal arrived and reversed the order. The speed of the attempt told them something important. Somebody was still trying to control evidence. By noon, the auditors had secured 6 laptops, 4 external drives, and the Foundation Al-O's cloud account. A preliminary check showed that 17 folders had been deleted between 8:52 and 9:11 the previous night. The deletion came from Ibrahim Alo's credentials. He denied doing it. "My password was shared," he said. "With whom?" "Staff." "Which staff?" He could not name one. Titi gave a written statement, claiming she knew nothing about procurement details. She described herself as a public-facing chairperson, whose role was donor engagement. Then she wrote that Ruth had arrived agitated and disoriented, making accusations she could not support. The language was deliberate. Agitated, disoriented. At 3:40, she called the rehabilitation clinic in Enugu and asked for Ruth Alo's medical summary. The administrator refused. Titi said she was Ruth Alo's daughter-in-law and head of the family foundation. The administrator still refused without written consent. So Titi searched old family emails until she found a discharge summary Victor had once forwarded while arranging insurance. The first page described the week after Ruth Alo's stroke. It mentioned 2 brief episodes of confusion. The second page, which Titi did not circulate, stated that Ruth Alo's cognition was intact and that she had full capacity to manage her affairs. Titi sent only the first page to 3 board members and 2 donors. Her message was gentle. "I am deeply concerned that Mama Ruth Alo's fragile health is being exploited by people who want to damage the foundation. Please treat her recent claims with compassion and caution." Within hours, sympathy had been turned into a weapon. That same afternoon, a 22-second video appeared online. It showed Ruth pulling her arm away from security. It showed papers falling. It showed Simi shouting. It did not show Titi Alo's insults. It did not show Ibrahim touching the bag. The caption read, "Confused elderly woman disrupts charity gala as suspended employee creates scene." By evening, the video had been shared over 9,000 times. Comments divided into camps. Some people asked why an elderly woman had been handled so roughly. Others mocked her clothing. One comment said, "These village mothers become dramatic when their sons marry rich women." Another said, "Maybe she wants control of the foundation money." Ruth read only 3 comments before placing the phone face down. Victor reached for it. "I will release the full story." "No. Mama, people are insulting you. They insulted me before they knew your name. Let them reveal themselves. This can damage the investigation. And then correct facts. Do not make my relationship to you the only reason people should respect me." Victor paced the room. "They are saying you are confused." "Am I? No, then evidence will show it." "What if evidence moves slowly?" Ruth looked at him. "Truth often walks with a stick, my son. That does not mean it will not arrive." The next day, Simi received a formal suspension notice. The allegation was serious. Unauthorized extraction of donor data. Disclosure of confidential records to an external party. Possible attempt to extort the foundation. Attached to the notice was a system log showing that protected files had been copied using her account at 2:13 in the morning. Simi had been asleep at home. She knew immediately what had happened. Her credentials had been cloned before her access was disabled. She called Titi. Titi answered after one ring. Have you seen your letter? Yes, Ma. Such a pity. You know I did not copy those files. I know what the system says. The same system you blocked me from. Titi laughed softly. Simi, this can end quietly. What do you want? Sign a statement that you became obsessed with proving fraud. Admit you contacted beneficiaries without authorization and manipulated documents to impress Victor. That is a lie. I can arrange 6 months' allo salary and a good reference. You are offering me money to confess to your crime. Mind your words. Mind your records. Titi Allo's voice changed. You think because Victor spoke to you kindly, you have become special. You are a small staff member. By next month, nobody will remember your name. Simi Allo's hand trembled, but her voice did not. Maybe. But the transfer records will remember yours. She ended the call. For several minutes, she sat on the edge of her bed, breathing hard. Courage did not feel heroic. It felt like fear with nowhere else to go. 2 days later, while Simi was still suspended, one of the elderly beneficiaries called her. The temporary railing outside the woman Allo's bathroom had come loose. She had nearly fallen. Simi had no authority to approve repairs. She had no company vehicle. Her salary was frozen pending investigation. She went anyway. She withdrew 47,000 naira from her emergency savings, hired a local technician, and paid for a reinforced rail to be installed properly. Ruth traveled with her. They watched the technician drill into solid support, test the bolts, and explain the work to the homeowner. When he finished, Simi asked the woman to test it herself. Ruth noticed. You did not take a picture, she said after they left. Simi looked confused. For what? To prove you helped. The rail is the proof. Ruth smiled. Why are you spending your own money when you may not get your job back? Simi adjusted her turquoise blouse. Because the woman will still need that rail, whether my name is cleared or not. Ruth looked ahead for a long time. Then she said, Character is what remains useful when applause is removed. Back in Lagos, Victor sat through the first forensic briefing. The auditors showed him 3 payment approvals carrying his electronic signature. He studied them. I signed these. Yes, sir. I relied on the project completion summary. Yes. Was the supporting evidence available to me? It was attached as a link. Victor remembered opening the summary on his phone between flights. He had read the first page, seen Titi Allo's note and approved the release. He had not opened the link. The lead auditor did not accuse him. That made the truth heavier. Later, he told Ruth. I did not know. She nodded. I believe you. I did not steal anything, I know. Then why are you looking at me like that? Because innocence is not the same as responsibility. Victor Allo's shoulders stiffened. Mama, you did not steal the money. But you lent your name to people you did not bother to check. I trusted my wife. You trusted comfort. Checking would have created trouble in your house. That is not fair. Is it false? Victor turned away. Ruth waited. After a long silence, he said, No. She softened. My son, evil does not always enter through a broken door. Sometimes it enters because a good man is tired and says, I will check tomorrow. Victor sat down. What do you want me to do to her? Ruth shook her head. Do not destroy Titi because she insulted me. She planted a theft accusation. That must be proved. And if it is, then law will answer. Victor looked frustrated. Mama, tell me what you want. Ruth raised 3 fingers, the left hand moving slowly. Finish the houses. Give Simi a fair investigation. And stand before the same public you wanted to impress. Tell them what you failed to supervise. Victor stared at her. You want me to admit fault publicly? I want you to stop calling it somebody else, Gallo's scandal. That evening, Titi announced a transparency and accountability forum. She chose Atlantic Crest Hotel, the same ballroom. She told donors that the event would correct misinformation, protect the foundation, and restore public trust. Privately, her plan was simpler. Blame Ibrahim for procurement. Blame Simi for stolen data. Blame Ruth Allo's health for the confusion. Blame Victor Allo's family loyalty for everything else. She believed one strong performance could still save her. Then, at 11:22 the night before the forum, Simi received an encrypted file from a hotel technician. The technician had found an automatic backup created before the main security footage was deleted. Simi opened it. The video showed Ibrahim Allo's hand moving toward Ruth Allo's paper bag. It showed the gold card disappear beneath the documents. It showed Titi watching. Then the audio captured her voice, clear and cold. "I do not care who that old woman is. People like her should never be allowed near cameras." Simi played it twice. On the third time, she called Victor. "Sir," she said, "the truth has arrived. The Transparency and Accountability Forum began at 11 on a Thursday morning. By 10:15, the ballroom was already half full. Donors occupied the front tables. Community representatives sat behind them. Journalists lined one wall with cameras and recorders. Foundation staff entered in small groups, speaking in whispers. 31 elderly beneficiaries had traveled from Enugu and Anambra. Some came with walking sticks, 2 used wheelchairs. One man carried the same food parcel bag he had received during the first Silver Haven visit, now folded flat beneath his arm. This time, nobody asked them to stand outside. The banner from the gala had been removed. In its place stood a plain screen. No portrait of Ruth, no smiling slogan. Only the Foundation Allo's name and the words Independent Public Review. Titi arrived at 10:42 in an emerald green suit, with a black blouse and sharp gold earrings. She had chosen the color carefully. Red would remind people of the gala. White would look like surrender. Green suggested renewal. She walked through the room, greeting donors by name. Her face carried controlled sorrow. "I am holding up," she told one woman. "God knows my heart." To another, she said, "This has been painful for all of us, especially Mama Ruth. I only want truth." Ibrahim entered 6 minutes later and sat at the far end of the panel table. He wore a navy suit and avoided Titi Arlo's eyes. Simi arrived with the independent auditors. Her staff badge had not been restored, so she wore no badge at all. She carried a sealed evidence file and sat behind counsel. At 10:58, Victor entered. He did not walk with Titi. He wore a simple charcoal suit, not the cobalt blue one from the gala. His face looked tired. He greeted the beneficiaries first, then took his place in the center of the panel. Titi leaned toward him. "You did not come home last night. This is not the time. Will there ever be a time?" "Yes." After the facts, she studied his face, searching for a sign that the marriage still gave her leverage. She found none. At 11:03, the moderator explained the procedure. Titi would speak first because she had requested the forum. The independent audit team would then present findings. Beneficiaries could respond. Victor, as initial sponsor and signatory to the first funding releases, would address governance responsibility. Titi rose. The room quieted. For several seconds, she said nothing. She looked down at her prepared speech. Then she looked up with wet eyes. 11 days ago, she began. An event meant to celebrate elderly dignity became a painful public misunderstanding. Her voice trembled at the correct places. "I deeply regret the way Mama Ruth was treated. I did not recognize her. Security had reported an unauthorized entry, and a missing access card was found among her belongings. I reacted under pressure. My words were unacceptable." She paused. A camera shutter clicked. "I have apologized to her privately. I am prepared to apologize again publicly." Ruth was not yet in the room. Titi continued. However, regret for one incident must not be used to destroy 7 months of genuine humanitarian work. Silver Haven has served hundreds. We have delivered food, medical support, and home repairs across multiple communities. She lifted a folder. Recent allegations of fraud arose from procurement processes managed by Mr. Ibrahim and from documents copied without authorization by a suspended compliance employee. Ibrahim Allo's head snapped toward her. Titi did not look at him. I was a public-facing chairperson. I relied on professional teams. If mistakes were made, I was not informed. Simi Allo's jaw tightened. Titi turned slightly toward Victor. I also believe family emotions have entered a matter that should remain professional. Mama Ruth Allo's health has been fragile since her stroke. Some people around her may have encouraged conclusions based on incomplete information. Murmurs moved through the room. Titi lifted one hand. I say this with compassion, not disrespect. Cognitive recovery can be complicated. Simi looked at Victor. He did not interrupt. His hands were folded on the table. Titi took his silence for advantage, she continued. I am not perfect, but I am not a thief. I am a woman who gave her time, face, and energy to a cause I believed in. Today, I ask this room not to confuse a painful family conflict with proof of financial crime. She lowered her papers. A few donors applauded. Not many, but enough to bring confidence back into her eyes. She returned to her chair. The moderator asked whether she wished to clarify her statement about Ruth Allo's health. Titi nodded gravely. I only mean that vulnerable people can be influenced. The rear doors opened. Every head turned. Ruth entered wearing a clean indigo blouse, a mustard wrapper, and low black shoes. Her head scarf was cream. She walked with the same wooden stick. Victor stood. So did Simi. Ruth did not wear jewelry apart from the old bead bracelet. She had refused the expensive outfit Victor bought for her. I am not attending my own coronation, she had told him. Victor came down from the platform and stopped beside her. May I? He asked, offering his arm. Ruth looked at him, then placed her right hand lightly on his sleeve. Together, they walked toward the front. Titi watched them. Ruth took the seat prepared beside the beneficiaries, not beside Victor. The moderator welcomed her and offered the microphone. Ruth stood again. Her first words came slowly. My name is Ruth Okafor. I am 70 years old. 14 months ago, I had a stroke. She looked at Titi. My left hand is weak. My leg becomes stiff when I am tired. Sometimes, when I speak for long, words do not come quickly. The room listened. That does not mean other people may choose my thoughts for me. A low sound of agreement came from the beneficiary section. Ruth held up a complete copy of her medical summary. No. The first page says, I was confused twice during the week after my stroke. The second page says my mind is clear and I can make my own decisions. Only the first page was shared with some of you. Titi Allo's shoulders tightened. Ruth handed the document to the moderator. I will not begin with the insult at the gala, she said. That happened to one woman. I will begin with the people whose names did not enter the video. She opened her notebook. She read the first complaint. A widow of 76. Bathroom rail fixed with 2 short screws. Walking frame removed after photographs. The widow stood from the beneficiary section and held up the original form, showing full delivery. Ruth read another, a man of 73. Promised access ramp. Project marked completed. No ramp built. Fell while trying to step into his bathroom. The man lifted the cloth from his leg, enough to show the healing wound. Another complaint. A retired seamstress. Roof repair certified. Rain still entered the sleeping room. Another. A woman who could not read had been asked to thumbprint a form saying she had received a wheelchair. She had never received one. Ruth did not read all 37. She read 9. 9 were enough. Then she closed the notebook. "This is not a quarrel between mother-in-law and wife," she said. "Rain does not know family quarrel. A broken rail does not know family quarrel. Missing money does not know family quarrel." Titi leaned toward her microphone. "Nobody is denying some contractors failed." Ruth turned. "Then why were their failures photographed as success?" Titi opened her mouth. Ruth continued. "Why was my face placed on reports I did not approve? Why was my signature copied? Why were people asked to hold equipment and return it after cameras stopped? That is not something I authorized. You authorized the pictures. I authorized impact documentation. Impact on whom?" The room went still. Titi looked toward the moderator. "This is becoming an attack." Ruth nodded. "Often feel like attack when somebody has been living inside a lie." A few people murmured approval. Titi Allo's face flushed. The moderator asked Ruth whether she wanted to address the gala incident. Ruth thought for a moment. "Yes." She looked around the room. "When I entered this hotel, Simi gave me a chair and water. She did not know my son. She did not know my bank account. She saw that my leg was tired." Simi lowered her eyes. "Titi saw the same thing," Ruth said. "She also did not know my son. That is why what happened matters." Titi shifted in her seat. Ruth Allo's voice became firmer. "If she had recognized me, she would have called me Mama. She would have brought photographers. She would have held my hand." The room was completely silent now. But because she believed I had no powerful person behind me, she called me dirt. That is the truth we should not hide beneath accounting language. Titi Allo's eyes hardened. "I apologized. You apologized for not recognizing me." Ruth leaned on her stick. "You did not apologize for believing a person must be recognized before she deserves respect." No applause came. The words were too heavy for applause. The independent audit presentation began at 12:11. The first slide showed the project scope. 57 homes approved for accessibility repairs. 113 mobility devices approved for distribution. 243.7 million naira received in the first phase. The next slide showed verified outcomes. 16 homes had partial work. 7 were reasonably complete. 9 had unsafe construction. 25 had no physical work matching the completion reports. Only 39 of the 113 mobility devices could be verified in beneficiary possession. A donor in the front row removed his glasses. The auditors moved to vendor records. 3 companies shared document templates, invoice errors, and source metadata. 2 bank accounts had transferred funds to a logistics company linked to Ibrahim Alo's former business. A third company paid 12 million naira to an image consultancy owned through a nominee connected to Titi. Titi leaned toward her lawyer. The lawyer whispered, "Let them finish." A slide displayed 11 invoices, reinforced bathroom rail. The same wrong spelling on all of them. A quiet laugh of disbelief moved through the room. The auditor explained the payment splitting. Amounts had been divided below additional approval thresholds. Titi interrupted. "That is a procurement technique. It does not prove I knew." The auditor nodded. "Correct. We therefore traced approval communications." The next slide showed an email from Ibrahim to Titi. "Madam, I divided the releases as discussed, so we do not need to return to the board before gala." Titi Allo's reply was one word: proceed. She leaned back. Ibrahim looked at her. Now the fear in his face carried satisfaction. The auditors displayed scanned project forms bearing Ruth Alo's signature. Each signature was exactly identical in angle, pixel formation, and pressure pattern because the same digital image had been pasted repeatedly. Ruth lifted her left hand. "Since the stroke, I sign with my right hand more slowly." Those forms carry a signature copied from a letter I wrote 6 years ago. The next evidence concerned media consent. Several beneficiaries had thumbprinted forms written only in English, though they had been interviewed in Igbo and could not read the document. No independent witness had explained how their images would be used. The moderator asked Titi whether the foundation had an informed consent procedure. We used standard forms. A signature is not informed consent if the person does not understand the form, she said from behind counsel. Titi turned. You are under investigation. You should not speak. The lead auditor answered. Ms. Johnson Allow's investigation has concluded on the data copy allegation. Simi looked at him. He continued. The access logs attributed to her account were created from an administrator terminal, while her credentials were disabled. Additional records show that her account token was cloned. We found no evidence she copied donor data for personal use. Titi Allow's face changed. That is impossible. The administrator terminal was accessed using credentials assigned to Mr. Ibrahim. All eyes moved to him. Ibrahim reached for the microphone. My login was used by staff. Name the staff, the auditor said. Ibrahim looked at Titi. She stared ahead. Many people had access, he said. Name one. Silence. The auditor moved to the hotel incident. A diagram showed the registration desk, corridor, and location of the ballroom cameras. Titi raised her hand. This has nothing to do with financial findings. It concerns attempted fabrication of theft involving a material witness. Her lawyer placed a hand on her arm. Sit, he whispered. The first video played. It showed Ruth and Simi entering through the staff corridor. Ruth held her paper bag continuously. The registration table was visible in the background. The second angle showed Ibrahim take a gold access card from the desk. A sharp murmur moved through the room. Ibrahim Allow's face became grey. The third angle showed him approach Ruth from behind. His hand disappeared beneath the top of the bag. Then the card fell out. The room erupted. Voices rose. Somebody shouted, "Shame!" The moderator called for order. Titi grabbed her microphone. I did not tell him to plant anything. Ibrahim turned to her. You told me to stop her. I said, control the situation. You said she must not reach Victor. Titi Allow's lawyer shut his eyes. The moderator warned them both to speak one at a time. Ibrahim no longer cared. She knew the old woman had complaints. She cancelled the airport car. She opened the envelope from Enugu. She told me to remove files. Titi stared at him. You are lying to save yourself. You approved every company. You brought the companies. You used the money. You took your share. Ruth lifted her microphone. Two people can be guilty at the same time. The quarrel stopped. The sentence landed harder than shouting. The final hotel clip played. This time, the audio was clear. Titi Allow's voice filled the ballroom. I do not care who that old woman is. People like her should never be allowed near cameras. Nobody moved. The recording continued. Titi Allow's insults played one after another. This hall is for donors, not people who followed the smell of free food from the roadside. You old street people are becoming too bold. Look at your wrapper. Look at your bag. Security. Throw this beggar out before she stains my carpet. Titi sat beneath the speakers, listening to herself. There was nowhere to hide from a voice that sounded so certain. When the video ended, the screen went black. Her reflection appeared in it. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then one of the women from the community stood. I was in your campaign video, she said. You called me Mama when the camera was on. After, your people took the walker from me. Another beneficiary stood. My roof still leaks. Another lifted a paper. You said I received a wheelchair. One by one, they spoke. Not loudly. They did not need volume. Titi looked around the room as control left her table. and moved into the hands of people she had treated as scenery. Victor rose. The moderator offered him the microphone. He remained standing behind the table for a moment, then walked down to the floor so he was level with the beneficiaries. "My name is Victor Okafor," he said. Crestline Holdings provided the initial funding for Silverhaven. I signed 3 release approvals. Titi looked at him sharply. Victor continued. I did not create the false vendors. I did not receive stolen funds. But I signed summaries without opening every supporting record. I trusted family where I should have required evidence. The lead auditor watched him carefully. Victor looked toward Ruth. My mother warned me years ago that a name can carry harm when the owner does not check what is tied to it. I did not listen soon enough. He faced the room. I accept responsibility for weak oversight. Effective immediately, I am stepping away from governance of the foundation until an independent board is appointed. Crestline will fund the completion and correction of all verified work. But the money will not pass through my family or the former foundation structure. Titi pushed back her chair. You are destroying everything we built. Victor turned. We built reports. Other people were still sleeping under leaking roofs. You want them to clap for you because you admit a small mistake. No. You are doing this because that woman is your mother. Ruth Allow's eyes narrowed. Titi pointed at her. You have always wanted him to yourself. You came here, turned him against me and made a family issue public. Victor Allow's face changed. Titi. No. Let me speak. Everybody is pretending she is innocent because she is old. She traveled here with complaints. She planned this. Ruth rose slowly. Yes, she said. I plan to speak to my son. You plan to shame me. I plan to stop unsafe work. You have won. Are you happy now? Ruth looked at the beneficiaries. No. Titi laughed bitterly. Of course you are. Your precious son has chosen you. Victor stepped between them. She is my mother. Titi threw up her hands. There, that is all anybody cares about. Victor looked at her for a long moment. She is my mother, he repeated. But that is not why you are wrong. The room stilled again. He pointed toward the chair where Ruth had first sat. You should not have needed to know who she was before giving her a chair. Titi Allow's mouth tightened. I made a mistake. You did not mistake her for somebody else. You believed she was nobody. Victor looked at Ruth, then back at his wife. I knew she was my mother. You should have known she was human. A sound moved through the room. Not applause at first. A breath. A collective release. Then the beneficiaries began to clap. Slowly, others joined. Titi stood alone at the panel table while the sound rose around her, her face twisted. You people are hypocrites, she said. All of you. You only respect her now because she is connected to him. Ruth lifted her hand, and the applause faded. She is right about one thing, Ruth said. Everybody turned. Titi's also looked surprised. Ruth continued. Many people in that ballroom changed their faces only after Victor said, That is my mother. Some who recorded me like entertainment later sent flowers. Some who moved their dresses away from my slippers later called me Ma. She looked across the donors and guests. Do not make Titi carry the whole sin of that room. She led it. Others followed because they thought cruelty was safer than courage. Several heads lowered. Ruth faced Titi again. What you did is yours, but the lesson is for all of us. Titi. Allow's eyes filled with tears. This time they were not controlled. When I had just turned 18, she said. A rich woman sent me out of a boutique because my shoes were repaired with glue. She told me the air conditioning was not for people who could not buy anything. Nobody interrupted. Titi Allow's voice cracked. My mother cleaned offices. I used to wait outside because she was ashamed for her employers to see me. At school, girls laughed at the smell of bleach on her clothes. She pressed both palms against the table. I promised myself nobody would ever look down on me again. Ruth Allow's face softened, but her voice remained firm. You escaped humiliation, she said, and then rebuilt it for other people. Titi closed her eyes. Ruth continued. Pain can explain the road you entered. It cannot excuse every place you drove. Titi sank into her chair. The moderator announced the preliminary decisions. Titi was removed from all foundation authority, pending legal proceedings. Ibrahim Allow's contract was terminated immediately. All suspicious accounts would be referred to independent counsel and the appropriate financial authorities. Assets linked to project funds would be traced. Simi was cleared of the data theft allegation and invited to participate in the redesign of whistleblower protections. The Foundation Allow's old board would be dissolved. A temporary oversight committee would include beneficiary representatives, an accessibility specialist, an independent accountant, and a community health professional. No family member of Victor would hold unilateral authority. At 2:38, the forum ended. Journalists crowded the exits. Victor asked security to create space for the elderly guests first. No red carpet, no photographs. Food was served before interviews. Ruth remained behind in the emptying ballroom. Titi stood near the table, staring at the wedding ring on her own hand. When the last camera left, she approached Ruth. Are you satisfied? She asked. Ruth shook her head. Your roof still stands. Some of theirs do not. You have destroyed my marriage. Ruth leaned on her stick. Your marriage was not destroyed when truth entered the room. It was destroyed when you decided some human beings were too poor to deserve the truth. Victor stood a few steps away. Titi turned to him. What happens now? He looked at his ring. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he removed it. Titi Al's breath caught. He did not throw it. He did not announce a divorce to the staff. He placed the ring on the table between them. We will separate, he said. Legal responsibility must be resolved. Then we will decide what remains of us. Titi stared at the ring. You have already decided. I have decided that love cannot be used to block accountability. He turned and walked toward his mother. Titi remained beneath the blank screen. For the first time in years, there was no camera waiting to make her pain beautiful. The first repairs began 5 days after the forum, not because the investigation had ended. It had barely started. But a broken bathroom rail did not need to wait for a lawyer to finish reading emails. An independent accessibility engineer inspected all 57 houses. Each inspection was recorded in a plain report that named the defect, the required correction, the cost, and the responsible contractor. Beneficiaries received copies in language they understood. Nobody was asked to thumbprint a blank page. At the first house, the engineer removed the railing. Ruth had pushed from the wall. The screws were only 4 centimeters long. They had been fixed into plaster, not structural support. The new rail was anchored properly and tested with more weight than any resident would place on it. The widow stood beside the worker, watched every step, and asked questions. Nobody told her to smile. At another house, the steep ramp was broken down and rebuilt. It took 9 days, because the drainage channel had to be redirected. The old design had looked acceptable from the angle used in the completion photograph. From a wheelchair, it had been dangerous. That difference became one of the first lessons in the new project meetings. A thing can look complete to the person standing above it, and remain impossible for the person who must use it. Victor attended the inspections without announcing his visits. The first time he arrived, 3 SUVs followed him. Ruth looked at the convoy and shook her head. My son, are you inspecting a ramp or invading a country? The next week, he came in 1 vehicle with 1 driver. He wore work shoes and carried a notebook. At the seventh house, he bent to examine a bathroom threshold. The homeowner watched him and asked, "Ogre, are you the engineer?" Victor smiled. "No, Ma. I am the man who signed without checking." The answer traveled through the community faster than any press statement. Some people praised him for admitting it. Ruth did not allow the praise to become another hiding place. "Admission is the door," she told him. "Repair is the journey." So Victor kept going. The old Silver Haven accounts remained frozen. Crestline placed correction funds into an escrow arrangement managed by the Temporary Oversight Committee. Every invoice required 2 independent approvals: beneficiary confirmation and photographic evidence showing actual use, not staged delivery. When mobility devices arrived, the process changed. Each person tested the equipment. Measurements were adjusted. Instructions were explained. A witness signed only after the beneficiary confirmed receipt. No device left the compound after the photograph. By the end of the 3rd month, 68 missing items had been delivered. 6 devices listed in the original order were found unsuitable and replaced with safer models. The remaining equipment arrived before the rainy season. 113 devices. 113 verified recipients. Not a number more, not a number less. Simi returned to Crestline under a temporary independent appointment. Victor offered her the title of Head of Foundation Compliance. She declined it. He looked surprised. "Why?" "Because the role still reports through your office. I am the sponsor. That is exactly the problem." They sat in a small conference room, not Victor Allow's executive office. Ruth had insisted that the redesign meetings happen around one table where everybody could see the same documents. Simi opened her proposal. "I want the Beneficiary Protection Unit to report directly to an independent ethics committee. No chairperson, donor, or family member should be able to stop an investigation alone." Victor leaned back. "You do not trust me. I trust controls more than good intentions, sir." Ruth, seated near the window, smiled. "My daughter, continue." Simi did. She proposed an anonymous reporting line managed outside the foundation. Retaliation against a whistleblower would trigger automatic board review. Procurement staff would declare family interests. Vendor ownership would be verified before payment. Project teams would photograph defects as well as finished work. Consent forms would be explained orally in the beneficiary ELO's preferred language. Victor read every page. Then he signed the governance charter. This time, he opened every attachment. Simi accepted the position only after the reporting line was changed. Her new title became Head of Ethics and Beneficiary Protection. The salary was higher, but that was not what made her mother cry when Simi told her. It was the public letter clearing her name. The letter stated that the allegations of data theft and extortion were unsupported and had been created using cloned credentials. It was sent to every donor, employee, and media organization that had received the accusation. Simi asked that the correction be given the same visibility as the lie. That became policy, too. False accusations often run in public, while apologies walk through the back door. This one did not. Ibrahim Allow's cooperation with investigators began only after his accounts were restricted. He surrendered emails, payment instructions, and details of the 3 shell companies. He claimed he had acted under Titi Allow's direction. Records showed that he had also diverted money without her knowledge. The law did not accept his attempt to become innocent by exposing another guilty person. Properties linked to the missing funds were traced. A warehouse registered to one vendor had never stored construction materials. It had been rented for 2 days during a donor inspection and filled with borrowed wheelchairs. The discovery shocked even the auditors. Ibrahim Allo's transport company had received payments disguised as rural delivery costs. Some vehicles listed in the claims had been off the road during the same period. He faced civil recovery proceedings and criminal investigation. His testimony was considered. His responsibility remained. Titi Allo's case was more complicated. She denied direct theft at first. Then bank records connected project funds to her private image company. The company had billed Silver Haven for campaign strategy, brand positioning, and donor acquisition at inflated rates. Some work had been done. Much of it existed only as duplicated presentations and staged content. A luxury apartment deposit had been paid 2 days after one of the split transfers. Titi said the timing was coincidence. The investigators did not build their case on timing alone. They traced the money. Over the next 7 months, assets connected to the diverted funds were placed under legal restriction. Titi entered a settlement on some civil claims, while the remaining matters continued through the proper process. She was required to repay misapplied funds, correct public statements, and surrender control of every program using Ruth Allo's identity. Her social media pages went silent. At first, people celebrated her fall with the same excitement they had used to watch Ruth Allo's humiliation. Ruth disliked it. Do not turn justice into another form of entertainment. She told Victor. But she made people suffer. Yes, then why should anybody protect her feelings? Accountability is not protection from consequences. It is also not permission for a crowd to become cruel. Victor frowned. You still defend her. I defend the difference between justice and appetite. The sentence stayed with him. Titi and Victor began formal separation. Their lawyers handled property and financial matters. Victor refused to make private payments disappear simply because exposure would embarrass the family. Titi interpreted that refusal as betrayal. During one meeting, she looked across the table and said, "Ugh! You would have covered this if your mother had not been involved," Victor answered honestly. "I might have tried to settle it quietly." Titi gave a bitter smile. "At least you admit it. I admit that would have been wrong." She looked away. Everybody is brave after they have been caught being weak. Victor did not defend himself. She was right. The separation became final 8 months after the forum. There was no dramatic courtroom shouting. No convoy arrived to throw Titi Allo's clothes into the road. She left the Lecky house with property, legally determined to be hers, and without assets, tied to disputed funds. The absence of spectacle disappointed some people online. Real consequences are often quieter than revenge. They last longer. As part of a civil resolution and an elder abuse education program, Titi attended supervised community sessions. The first session took place in a modest hall in Enugu. Plastic chairs formed a circle. There was no stage. She arrived 20 minutes late in dark glasses. Ruth was not present. Simi was. The facilitator asked participants to describe harm without interruption. One widow spoke about signing a form she could not read. Another described holding a walking frame for a photograph, then watching it leave in the boot of a car. Titi sat with her arms folded. When the facilitator asked what she had heard, she said, "There were failures in distribution." Simi looked at her. The widow shook her head. "No, madam. You heard that you used my body to advertise what you did not give me." Titi Allo's lips tightened. She wanted to argue. The rules required listening. At the second session, she spoke less. At the third, an elderly man asked her, "When you saw us, what did you see?" Titi answered, "Beneficiaries." He shook his head. "That is not a person." She had no reply. Change did not arrive like thunder. It came as discomfort she could no longer hand to an assistant. Months later, Titi returned to the first repaired bungalow. She wore a plain blue dress. No camera followed her. The widow was sitting outside. Titi stopped at the gate. "May I enter?" she asked. The woman looked at her for a long time. "No," she said. Titi Alo's face fell. The widow continued. "Not today." Titi nodded. She left without arguing. That was one of the first signs that she was learning. Not because she had apologized, but because she accepted that apology did not create an obligation to forgive. Ruth heard about the visit from Simi. "Did the woman allow her inside?" she asked. "No." "Good." Simi looked surprised. Ruth explained. "People think forgiveness means opening your door before trust has grown legs. It does not." Victor Alla's relationship with his mother also changed, though not in the way he first imagined. He bought a larger house near his Lekki residence and told Ruth it had a lift, accessible bathroom, garden, and live-in nurse. Ruth listened patiently. Then she said no. Victor blinked. "Mama, you have not even seen it. I have seen houses. This one is close to me." "Close to your gate is not the same as close to your life." He sat down. "What do you want?" It was the first time he had asked without offering an answer inside the question. Ruth wanted a smaller bungalow near a community health center. She wanted level entrances, wide doors, and a kitchen she could use safely. She wanted a spare room, not for a live-in nurse, but for friends and visiting relatives. She wanted to remain close enough to Enugu to continue community work, and close enough to Lagos for Victor to visit, without treating the journey like an international mission. They found a suitable house outside Enugu and renovated it with Ruth present at every design meeting. The architect suggested polished tiles. Ruth rejected them. They become slippery when wet. The contractor proposed a decorative ramp. Ruth tested the gradient with her stick and rejected that too. Accessibility is not decoration. Victor watched her question door handles, light switches, and bathroom height. He realized how many decisions had once been made for her, because everybody assumed help gave them authority. On the day she moved in, he asked whether she wanted him to hire a full-time carer. "I want support when I request it," Ruth said. "Not a person following me like my shadow." "What if you fall?" "What if you fall?" "I am 41, and therefore protected from the floor." He laughed. She smiled. They agreed on morning check-ins, a medical alert device, and scheduled support visits. Ruth retained control over who entered her home. Accessibility is not the same as dependence, she reminded him. Victor began visiting every second weekend. At first, he arrived with work calls, 2 phones, and a laptop. Ruth made him place them inside a drawer during meals. "What if there is an emergency?" he asked. "If the whole company cannot survive one bowl of soup, close it." He obeyed. They spoke about ordinary things. Her garden, his childhood, the neighbor Alo's noisy generator, the fear she felt during rehabilitation, the guilt he carried after the gala. Sometimes Ruth became tired and slept, while Victor sat quietly beside the window. He learned that presence did not always need conversation. 9 months after the forum, the Temporary Oversight Committee recommended that the old Silver Haven name be retired. Too much harm had been hidden beneath it. Ruth proposed a new training program instead of another celebrity charity. She called it A Chair Before a Question. The name came from Simi Alo's first act at the hotel gate. Before asking Ruth who she was, where she was going, or whether she belonged there, Simi had seen that her leg was shaking and brought a chair. The program trained staff in hotels, hospitals, banks, and large offices to respond to elderly and disabled visitors with dignity. The lessons were practical. Offer a seat before conducting a long verification. Speak to the person, not only to whoever accompanies them. Ask before touching an arm, wheelchair, or walking stick. Do not interpret slow speech as low intelligence. Do not use somebody, Alo's medical history, to dismiss current decisions. Do not photograph vulnerable people without clear consent. Do not assume old clothes mean criminal intent. And never allow wealth, clothing, or family connection to determine who receives basic courtesy. Simi helped design the training. Ruth tested every module. Victor funded the pilot, but did not place his company logo across the materials. At the first session inside Atlantic Crest Hotel, the same security guard who had blocked Ruth at the service gate sat in the front row. He had asked to attend. During the discussion, he raised his hand. "I thought I was doing my job," he said. Ruth nodded. "What is your job?" "To protect the hotel." "From what?" "Threats." "Was I a threat?" He looked down. "No, Ma." "What made you think I might be?" "My appearance." Ruth waited, he continued, "and because I thought nobody important would come through the service gate." "Do only important people feel heat?" "No, Ma." "Do only important people fall?" "No." "Then protect the hotel without removing another person, Alo's humanity." He nodded. After the session, he apologized privately. Ruth accepted the apology. She did not pretend the memory had disappeared. A plain wooden chair from the Hotel Alo's staff entrance was placed inside the training room. It was not expensive. One leg had been repaired. The paint was scratched near the back. Victor offered to replace it with a new one. Ruth refused. That chair did its work before anybody knew my surname. The chair became the program Alo's symbol. Not Ruth Alo's portrait. Not Victor Alo's company. A chair. Something ordinary made meaningful by the moment it was offered. By the 11th month, all 57 houses had been revisited. 40 were fully corrected. 17 required additional drainage, roofing, or structural work beyond the original scope, and those repairs continued under separate community agreements. The foundation published the unfinished status instead of calling everything completed. That was progress, too. Honesty did not always produce a perfect number. It produced a true one. The final public review took place in Enugu, not Lagos. There were no chandeliers. The hall had ceiling fans, open windows, and rows of plastic chairs. Beneficiaries spoke before donors. Simi presented the new control system. Victor presented the financial recovery report and answered questions about his oversight failure. He did not say he had learned his lesson, as if one sentence could close the matter. He showed the changes. Ruth spoke last. She stood behind a wooden lectern and looked at the room. "When this began," she said, "many people thought the important moment was when my son said, 'That is my mother.'" She paused. It was a powerful moment, but it also exposed something dangerous. The hall became quiet. Before he spoke, I was already a person, already a mother, already a retired nurse, already a woman in pain. His sentence did not create my dignity. It only forced the room to notice what it had refused to see. Victor lowered his head. Ruth continued. "If you respect an old woman only after discovering her son is rich, you do not respect her. You fear her connection." A few people murmured agreement. "If you call a poor man Sir Alo only after learning he owns the building, that is not humility. It is calculation." She looked toward the beneficiaries. "And if charity uses people as pictures but does not listen when they speak, it is not service. It is decoration." The words settled over the hall. Ruth rested both hands on the lectern. Every human being needs help at some point. A body becomes tired. Work disappears. Illness comes. Age comes. The person you ignore today may never become rich. She may never reveal a powerful family. She may remain exactly as you first saw her. Her voice softened. "She still deserves the chair." The hall rose. This time, the applause did not follow a billionaire Elo's reveal. It followed the truth. After the meeting, Victor walked with Ruth toward her car. The evening air was cool. She moved slowly, but she did not rush. "Mama," he said, "are you proud of what we repaired?" Ruth looked at him. "I am grateful. That is not the same answer." "No. Are you proud of me?" She stopped beside the car. "I am proud that you stopped defending yourself long enough to learn." Victor smiled. "Only that, for today." He opened the car door. Ruth looked back at the hall, where workers were stacking plastic chairs. One young employee lifted two at once, another swept the floor. Simi stood near the entrance, speaking to a widow about a complaint line. No camera followed them. The work continued anyway. 3 weeks after the Enugu review, Atlantic Crest faced a test nobody had planned. At 6:26 in the evening, an elderly woman arrived alone at the main entrance. Her blouse was wet from rain. One sandal had broken near the strap. She carried no invitation and could not remember the surname of the guest she had come to meet. The lobby was crowded because a banking conference had just ended. A year earlier, the woman might have been pushed toward the gate before anybody asked whether she was safe. This time, the security guard brought a chair. He offered water. He asked before touching her wet bag. Then he called the duty manager and spoke directly to her, not over her head. "Mama, do you remember the person Aloe's first name?" "Grace," she said. "She works with a bank. There are many Grace here today. Do you know which bank?" The woman shook her head. The guard did not laugh. He asked whether she had a telephone number written anywhere. She searched slowly and found a folded church program inside her bag. One number had been written on the back. The duty manager called it. A woman attending the conference answered and rushed into the lobby 6 minutes later. "That is my auntie," she cried. The elderly woman had taken the wrong bus after missing her stop. Rain had damaged her phone. She had walked from the junction because a conductor pointed toward the hotel lights. Nobody in the lobby knew whether she had money. Nobody needed to know. The guard later sent the incident report to Simi under the heading "A chair." Before a question procedure applied, Simi forwarded it to Ruth. Ruth read it twice. Then she called the guard. "Well done," she said. He sounded shy. "Thank you, Ma. Do not do it because you think I will hear. No, Ma. Do it because one day nobody may hear. I understand. That small incident never reached the news. No donor funded a video about it." The elderly woman was not related to a billionaire. She did not own the bank. She did not return the next morning to reward the guard. She simply went home safely. That was enough. Titi heard about the incident during one of her supervised education sessions. She remained quiet while the facilitator read the report. Afterwards, she asked Simi, "Did Ruth arrange it to teach me something?" "No. You expect me to believe an old woman just appeared at the same hotel. Old people enter hotels every day, Titi. You only notice the story now because you have finally started looking." Titi stared at the floor. For months, she had believed her punishment was losing the house, the title, the marriage, and the public admiration. Slowly, she began to understand that the deeper consequence was being forced to see the human cost she had once edited out of frame. She asked to meet Ruth. Ruth refused the first request. She refused the second. On the third, almost a year after the gala, she agreed to a 30-minute meeting at the community health center. Simi sat outside the room. Victor did not attend. Titi arrived early. She wore a simple navy dress and carried no gift. Ruth entered with her stick and sat opposite her. For a while, neither woman spoke. Titi began. "I am sorry." Ruth waited. Titi swallowed. "I am sorry I called you a beggar." "Why?" "Because you were Victor Aloe's mother." Ruth Aloe's eyebrows rose. Titi closed her eyes. "No, that is the wrong answer. Yes, I am sorry, because I believed being poor made somebody less clean, less intelligent, and less entitled to space. I used charity to prove I had escaped people. I was still ashamed to come from. Ruth said nothing. Titi continued. I am sorry I used your face without asking. I am sorry I called your mind weak because I was afraid of what you knew. I am sorry I helped steal choices from people while saying I was giving them dignity. Her voice broke. I do not expect you to forgive me. That is good, Ruth said. Titi looked up. Because forgiveness requested as payment for an apology is another transaction. Titi nodded. Ruth studied her for a long moment. What will you do after your program ends? I do not know. Then no. Titi frowned slightly. Ruth explained. Punishment can stop a person for a season. Character is what she chooses when nobody is supervising her again. Titi looked toward the window. I cannot return to charity work. Nobody will trust me. Perhaps you should not lead anybody Aloe's charity. The answer was blunt. Titi accepted it. But you can live honestly, Ruth continued. You can stop using pain as permission. You can pay what you owe. You can speak truth when a lie would protect you. Redemption is not always getting your old position back. Titi Aloe's tears fell now. Ruth did not move closer. Compassion did not require pretending trust had returned. When the 30 minutes ended, Titi stood. Will you ever forgive me? Ruth considered the question. I am working on releasing the anger because I do not want to carry you inside my body. That is for my health, not your comfort. Titi nodded slowly. And trust? Trust is not a speech. It is a bridge built from repeated truth. Yours has one plank. Titi left the room without asking for more. Ruth watched the door close. Then she exhaled. Simi entered. How was it? Necessary. Do you believe her? Ruth adjusted the bead bracelet on her wrist. I believe she finally heard herself. What she does with that sound is her responsibility. That was the part of the story that stayed with me. Not only the silence after Victor said, "That is my mother." Not only Tito's face when the evidence appeared. Those moments were satisfying because hidden cruelty was exposed. But revelation alone does not repair a roof. Public shame does not install a safe rail. A powerful sentence can stop 2 guards, but it cannot build a system that protects the next old woman whose son is not a billionaire. The deeper lesson came after the ballroom emptied. It came when Simi insisted that controls mattered more than good intentions. It came when Victor admitted that ignorance did not erase responsibility. It came when Ruth refused to turn justice into cruelty. It came when a widow said no to an apology and was allowed to keep her door closed. Most of all, it came from one uncomfortable question. What would Titi have done if Victor had never entered that room? The answer is why character matters. Real respect does not wait for a surname. It does not wait for a convoy. It does not wait for somebody powerful to say, that person belongs to me. A human being already belongs among human beings. And respect that arrives only after wealth is revealed is not respect. It is fear wearing good clothes.